Welcome to A Photographer's Life, the channel that takes you behind the curtain into the world of professional architectural photography. Join us now for an episode with some of America's premier architectural photographers. Today's broadcast comes from a recent Zoom meeting of the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This discussion is led by AIAP Director Alan Blakely. We hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. Now, on with the show.
So we want to welcome everybody to the March 31st meeting, AIAP. The topic that we had publicized today was medium and large format cameras. So let me just give you a little bit of background about what happened. We postponed the meeting because there was some interest from a couple of manufacturers about joining the program and having their reps. And I was supposed to reach out to these reps. And so I reached out to 3 different people from Fujifilm who are in the GFX product line. And I also reached out to 2 individuals at Cambo. And I got ghosted by all 5 people. So I'm not sure what that tells me. I was hoping that we'd be able to hear a little bit about, what they're doing, what's coming down the line, that kind of stuff. I'm not a medium or large format user right now. And so, and I probably wouldn't be unless there was some really compelling reason. So there are a few other topics that we can jump into, but I just wanted to, we'll start this out here. Is there anybody in this group here that's using medium or large format right now? That's interesting. And see,
how many missed their RB67s?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I miss the lenses.
I do too. The lenses.
I don't miss the film wind. Yeah, wind the body, crank the body, wind the back. I don't miss that. I'm kind of surprised that the manufacturers didn't respond on this. I really thought after the email that I'd sent out and calls I made that maybe we'd have a jump on that. And actually, I think Martin.
He's showing off there with his picture.
Oh, he's got his already. He's got
the medium format guy.
Yeah. So Gary, welcome. Martin, hi. We just you missed it a little bit of the intro here. I was just mentioning that the representatives from Fuji and Cambo that were invited to join us, which were 5 individuals in total, ghosted us on this, and so we don't have the manufacturer trying to pitch us on anything here. So I'm just quite, interested in understanding if there's anybody here that's using that. And I know, Martin, that you do. And can you just tell us what it is that you do use?
Yeah, so I'm running Cambo Wide RS.
Okay.
With a Phase 1 IQ4 150, and have been for the last 3-4 years or so now. On the IQ4 150. I started out on a P45 that I had originally gotten just after taking a workshop with Jeffrey Jacobs and crew with Capture Integration. I think that was back in about 2012. I could go look, but it's probably about that. And before that, I was actually shooting a lot of large format film. Largely on my own. So yeah.
And I'm just curious: has that been an advantage to you in your clientele, in the market? Competitively. Why do you do that?
I do that. I do that for several reasons. One is, I also run Canon gear with the tilt shifts and all that, but there's a particular look that you get with the Tech Cam lenses, and also the flexibility that you get on a TechCam platform that's actually very close to what you used to get, essentially combining all of the advantages of shooting large format on a field cam, as far as having all the movements, having movements that work the way that you think they should, and all of that, and also having the advantages of shooting all digital, not having to deal with film. And there are certainly a bunch of trade-offs with that, not the least of which is expense and portability and all of that. But on my current platform, I actually end up using both the Schneider lenses that I've got for the Cambo, and also adapted Canon optics where necessary. And that actually works surprisingly well. There's a number of cases, for instance, in dealing with people in short flash, and if I'm having to shoot a small space quickly and whatnot, where I end up moving on to the 35. But as far as for how things work for my clients, it's very rare for me to actually have somebody who asks for the resolution. I've had that happen, I think, twice in the last few years, but
Really?
you really need it. But what's been really great, as far as I'm concerned, is the dynamic range that you get with Phase's dual exposure setup. So I end up having to do a lot less work, a lot less futzing around with things like HDR and all that, for dealing with situations where you have relatively wide dynamic range and you're not wanting to deal with flash, at least in the ways that you would be forced to on older gear. Now, of course, one still does for compositional reasons, but I'm based in Vancouver, and a lot of things that I end up photographing end up taking advantage of their views. And so you end up having a lot of big glass windows where having, enough dynamic range to actually get the job done mostly. I still manage to push it at times. But in a lot of cases, having that makes your life in post and also, in composition, a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster. And that's really that, and ease of handling are the two big things for me. I do end up selling the advantage of being able to crop into details on the images, and I have clients who make good use of that. That's less common than it used to be. And maybe I need to do a little bit of extra client education around that. But having that possibility to say in a photo of your background, be able to crop right in on that light fixture and not lose quality if you're doing things like a small portfolio detail, or even up to like an 8x10 or something for your trade show, not to mention Instagram. That is extra flexibility that works really well for clients, particularly when they're wanting to have the more formally composed things, but also be able to zoom in on those details for social media without necessarily doing that on location. So yeah, that's basically my two bets.
All right. I appreciate that. David's here, and I know David has the Fuji set up, and David, I'm just curious what the advantages you're seeing with the Fuji system are.
As far as dynamic range and not have to bracket my exposures, the lens is excellent quality. I use the iPad Cam Ranger. So I haven't set up the new system to go wireless to my iPad from the Fuji. So that's one thing I got to set up. But as far as the quality, yeah, it's pretty impressive. And the people I do my retouching, they're impressed with the files from the Fuji, the 50 GFX 50. So far so good. And I know they're always improving it with updates. The one issue that I talked to the rep when he came into Portland. This was a couple years ago. Was putting on a tilt shift lens with an adapter
Right.
on camera, and he wasn't. Through the conversation, we got to the point where he says that he wouldn't recommend that yet until that's been updated. So,
yeah, evidently they've announced that they're going to produce 2 tilt shift lenses this year. A 30 is a 30, I believe, was, and then there was a longer one.
30.
Is that right, Jack? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 30, and I
Okay.
think a 110
Okay.
is the other one. And I've been using my Canon tilt shift lenses with a GFX 100S
Oh, okay.
adapted, and they work perfectly.
okay.
They resolve the 100 megapixel files, 100 megabyte files easily, and and I've used Fuji for years for my personal work, and I just happen to like the glass and like the JPEGs that can come out of it for personal work. But so whenever I had a chance to switch over for architectural, I took the opportunity.
So who makes the adapter that you use for that then?
I was just looking in my notes to answer that question.
And how long have you had that adapter? How many has it been? A couple years, 3 years, a year that you've had that adapter?
I've had it for the last year.
Okay, because that makes sense.
Is there a crop factor that goes with that adapter?
No, there is not.
Put a 24 on and it's a 24?
It's a 24. Yeah, although the aspect ratio of the medium format file is different than 35 millimeter, but there's no reduction in the size of the image in any way. I'm still looking for where
That'd be great to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see anything. I mean, I didn't do a lot of research, but I didn't really see anything. Looking around, there was a couple Eastern European adapters that looked a little sketchy, but I was curious about that. I love the Fuji glass. I mean, years ago I had that old 680. Do you remember that camera? Big monster camera with the bellows. And the lenses had Seiko shutters. Those were amazing cameras. But since then, I've got the little X camera that I used, in my pocket, but that's about it.
Yeah, when we shot 4x5, we would use the Fujinon lenses.
Yeah.
Back in the day, so I definitely have confidence in the product.
Yeah, and they're kind of a different flavor than Schneiders or Nicors or whatever. They've got a really interesting look.
So the adapter is by Tech Art, TECHART, and it's an EF FG01 Plus. I've got it sitting on my 24 tilt shift, and it's a manual lens, so I don't care if it autofocuses.
Right.
I don't know if it does or not, but guess I could test it with another R lens. But no, it works great. There's no problem at all. Let me see if.
Yeah, thanks for that information.
Is there any?
Yeah, there's no glass in here at all.
Oh, so it's just just an adapter then.
It's just an adapter.
Wow.
Yeah, just got all the pins on both sides. So yeah, works great.
Any other lenses you're using adapting to that camera?
All of the tilt shift lenses, so 17, 24, 45, and 90.
I was curious about the 17, what that does for you.
I don't use it that often. It does strange things no matter what camera you hang it on. So no, but it works. I've used it, and it works just fine. You just have to watch out you don't get too much distortion on the side. So the same way if it was on a Canon camera. And then I've got 3 Fuji lenses, 3 zooms
Okay.
that I use. And I've got an architectural shoot in Annapolis that I'm going to try. They're a brand new 20 to 35, I think it is.
Yeah, Jack. That's what I was going to ask you. The new zoom that they have. That's a 20 to 35, you said?
Yeah, it's a 20 to 35, and because it's a 0.75 to get to the equivalent 35 millimeter, so it's like a 15 to a 24.
Okay.
And I got that to see. I do landscape photography also, so having something in this range is perfect.
Nice.
But I thought I'd try it for architectural work because I've got to shoot a lot of photos in a short period of time. And a manual lens and the tilt shift, just slows me down, which I don't mind in most cases, but I've got to get a lot done on this job in one day.
I just noticed that this morning that there was a thing that came through that Fuji's dropped the price on the bodies for those cameras, or they're dropping them. I don't know what they were before. So like the 100 is $49.99 now, which puts it, down in the range of the Canon and Nikon bodies. I don't know. Anybody ready to jump? Brad's shaking.
I would if I could afford it.
Toes in the water, but Jack, what about if you compare, say, shooting 4x5 to 35, the 4x5, the depth of field, the area that you have to carry and focus, obviously, and 35s, it's more liberal, so to speak, comparative. Now, on the 2 1/4, do you find that you have to stop down more on the Fuji in your landscaping and so on to get the depth of field that you want compared to 35? On your,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for architectural work, I find myself, if I've got something close in the foreground and further away, I end up having to do 2 exposures and focus stack.
Okay.
I'll just combine 2 images in Photoshop. But out of 28 images on the last job I did, I only had to do that once, maybe twice. I got sufficient depth of field. But it is different. It absolutely is. You have, I'll notice when I'm zooming in on my Cam Ranger that either it looks sharp up close or it looks sharp far away, and not always in both. I shoot at f8 almost all the time.
Now, are you shooting for this one project that Justin and I work on, Justin Krug, who's also on the Zoom call, one client that we have, they want us to shoot at 100 ISO. Do you usually shoot at 100?
I think the native on the GFX 100S is 160.
That's right.
And there's so little noise. And whatever noise is there, Topaz, the noise gets rid of. So I haven't had anybody say, they don't like how clean the files are.
Oh, I know. All right.
And I can't think of why a client would say, I want it at ISO 100. It's like, what difference does it make what ISO I shoot it at if I give you a file you can't find any noise in?
You can always go back and edit the metadata.
Oh, okay. That's true.
Shoot it wherever you want.
Right.
I would never do that, of course, but.
Oh, no. And we didn't hear you say that.
Yeah. Interesting. Anything else we want to talk about with regard to these?
I was curious, with your Fuji lenses, do they come with software for lens correction since they're not tilt shift?
That's one of the really interesting things. All of the corrections are done in body. So they come out perfectly corrected with the Fuji lenses. That's one of the reasons why I'll be interested in the tilt shift lens when it comes out. It'll probably be $10,000 or something ridiculous, but No, they come out completely corrected, and you don't, when I import them into Lightroom, it's done. Obviously when I'm shooting with the Canon lens, that's not the case. And, I have to do a manual distortion correction for that, but no, everything comes out square. As long as I'm level, it's square.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen one YouTuber he's gone in and turned off the correction to see what it looks like, without the correction. So the camera's doing it for you. And, it's just magic.
Yeah.
Just an interjection here as far as lens correction goes. I know that there are some native things, and I know this happens on drones a lot, but I was speaking to a fellow who's not really a photographer, he's more of an optician, but he said that that a lot of these cameras, if you shoot in the JPEG plus RAW mode, that it will embed the correction whereas if you shoot just in RAW, that you miss that correction. And so I have noticed that I do have cameras, and especially my drone, that if I shoot in that mode, if I shoot in JPEG plus RAW and then pull it into Lightroom, that it is corrected. Whereas with RAW, I was really wrestling with trying to find a correction for it in Lightroom. So I don't know if that holds true on very many or which one specifically, but it was kind of an interesting discovery for me this last couple of weeks. So just thought I'd pass that up.
I know with the Fuji, it corrects it in both the RAW and the JPEG. You have to do some magic to shut it off.
Okay.
I can't remember what the steps are because I don't really need to shut it off.
Mm-hmm. Unless there's anything else, let's jump to something else here. Another topic that Dale brought up. Anybody got anything more on this medium large? I'm still on the fence about it. And maybe it's because we're all old. I don't know. We're not all old, but some of us are old.
Mark, yeah.
Justin,
you're just a kid too.
That's right.
So I have a question. I don't know if you guys addressed this about medium format, but those of you who use it, rely on it compared to the 35 millimeter, besides the dynamic range, are you noticing other qualities in the images that you can identify as being characteristic of medium format, something special just about the look of the photographs or the files?
Low noise, good color. Of course, I like Canon color too. And there was mention of cropping, the ability to crop in. And I've done that, numerous times where a client wanted something shot with an aspect ratio for an iPhone for Instagram. And so I was able to crop in and, give them incredible detail. I could, just go down to like 1/10 of the size of the image and it was still sharp. Yeah, medium has a little different look. They're both good. For me, as I said, I like the colors. I like the way the Fuji X-T3 does things. It's the same with the medium format.
Yeah,
we had talked about back in the day, you compare 4x5 to, like, say 35 on the same shot, and medium format's the same case. The bigger the sensor or the bigger the film, it's hard to describe until you side by side. You get more depth, you get more of a three-dimensional look when you shoot with the larger sensor compared to a smaller sensor. And Jack, I'm sure you can see that in your landscaping and your architecture when you're using the Fuji. I noticed that big time. And when I used to use the Hasselblad shooting film, again, side by side, when you look through these architectural magazines, Elle Decor, Architectural Digest, you could tell, I can tell, besides the aspect ratio and the cropping, what shot medium format, what shot 35. but you almost have to have a trained eye, and you have to look side by side to really pick it up. But that's my another positive with the medium format.
And whether that's worth, $15,000 or whatever it costs to converge, is a personal business decision. I can't argue with the fact that, you're using 10-year-old equipment and producing stellar work, that clients love, and you don't have to invest any additional money. I mean, that makes great business sense.
Yeah, there is, as Norman mentioned, or as David mentioned, there is, that medium format look, and those of us who shoot medium format do absolutely notice it, and it's hard to quantify exactly what goes into it. But one thing that I ended up noticing and actually using a lot, and I think this may be a phase specific thing these days, although Canon seems to have grabbed it, is the ability to do in-camera frame averaging, which I tend to pull out if I'm dealing with traffic and all that sort of stuff. You can do similar things using post and or neutral density. Having the ability to do that in a couple of clicks is super useful, particularly if you're in situations where you really want to not be jostling the camera for putting your filters on and off and whatnot. That's a fun one.
Interesting.
And that's particular to phase one, right?
Yeah.
I've seen people do that. It's great, but whatever, $40,000 for the camera.
Yeah. One of the things that that's actually worth noting is if you're looking at going to phase in particular, and I'm not sure whether Fuji works the same way, but work with a good dealer, because you end up they have a good certified pre-owned setup, as well as a lot of older lenses that happen to work great. So because the gear lasts for so long, and you have, outside of the shutters on the lenses, relatively few moving parts, sure, having to buy new is expensive, but there's usually ways to do that. I work with B3K Digital up here in Canada, and they've been fantastic. Local dealers, wherever you are, will also do similar things. And do not trust the online sticker prices for phase and Cambo gear. There's ways to get in for less. I did, and I think most other people who do it have as well.
Good to know. Thanks, Martin. I appreciate that. Let's jump subjects here, and Dale brought up a question about dealing with LED lights, and Dale, I'll kind of let you explain maybe what the circumstances are that you're talking about.
Yeah, as I've mentioned before, I do a lot of institutional work, a lot of schools and police stations, fire stations, water districts, and so forth. And they've all switched over to LED lighting. And I've noticed that I'm getting a lot of flare and glare from LED lights. I don't know if anybody else has had that issue. And I was curious as to what the solution is, because I'm doing a lot of post editing, trying to get rid of it and make it a little sharper.
Is there a particular lens where that flare is happening? Is it with your 17 or a different, your wider lens?
Yeah, it's obviously with wider angle lenses. Yeah. You'll grab it. And I just wondered if a polarizing film or something would help. I didn't know.
I've had that. You got to obviously be real careful when you're in a hurry or setting up. You got to really examine those top corners of that flare coming in, and you just have a flag or whatever. Scrim that off. Yeah.
Dale, are you shooting brackets or with lights?
What's that? Are
you shooting with brackets or are you shooting with lights?
I'm shooting brackets.
Yeah, I haven't had that problem shooting brackets. I mean, I shoot a lot of commercial spaces as well. The same thing, LED lighting, and they come out. I mean, I can see the rim on all the lay-in fixtures. They come out really clean. So I'm shooting Sony though. I'm not shooting the Canon 17, but that lens actually has a pretty decent reputation. So I don't know what the. I
You
shoot
need
at
to
a
tell
low-
your.
I shoot at ISO 100 too. I mean, I
Mhm.
don't know if that makes a help. I always do. So
Yeah, I shoot at 100 as much as I can, unless I've got people moving or something. But
Dale, can you share the screen? I don't know if you feel comfortable just showing an example. That might be helpful.
sure, yeah.
Well, while he's doing that, I run into that a lot because I do a lot of commercial buildings as well, like fire stations and things like that have the big LEDs way up in the ceiling. And I just shot a prison a while back and had the same problem with it. And you do get a lot of flare from those, no matter what you do. And I have an arm with a flag that I have all the time on my tripod. And even if you flag those, and I've tried polarizing, and I've tried putting a grad filter on to try to knock that down a little bit. And I find that I have to fix them all in post because I haven't found a solution, in camera to take care of that. But sorry, Dale, go ahead.
Well, in some cases worse than others. Usually, like it's a huge space. I tend to get it more on the bigger space than the smaller spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I end up shooting for a lot of folks who do lighting design, so we end up having to show the fixture as well as the space, which is always fun. And I end up actually using luminosity masking for that. So I end up with that problem all the time. There's two issues that I run into a lot. One of them is, of course, having flare, and that's flags, scrims, compendium shades, that sort of stuff can take care of mostly. But also there's the flare that you have on the light itself.
Yeah.
And arguably, shooting at a lower aperture and a shorter exposure can in some cases knock that down. I've found, since I'm already, at fade on the medium format gear, that doesn't really do it for me. But I've got folks who do work in 35 who will explicitly shoot a bracket at a wider aperture to take care of that. But I usually find that if I do a bracket where I'm properly exposing the lit part of the fixture and then use that as a luminosity mask, then that will tend to preserve the light that's coming out of the fixture and make doing the rest of your post for that way easier.
Thanks.
Good tip on that. One of the things too, I found that there's different fixtures have kind of a different luminosity range. That's where that flare occurs. It's not always a highlight. Sometimes it's a mid-range flare. And so it varies from fixture to fixture. And, thankfully there's not such variety in LEDs as there used to be. But it's still kind of an issue. Any other thoughts
Alan,
on that? Yeah.
Alan, what are you using for your flag? Your flag over your lens. Is
I have a piece of black foam core.
It's got your logo. It's got your logo on it. Yeah.
No, it's just black. It's got gaffer tape on it occasionally if it gets crunched by TSA. But I have a Manfrotto tripod that's got the little socket for accessory stuff, and so then I've got the articulated arm with the little mini clamp on it, and then I have the flag there, and the flag's 11 by 14, and so I can usually fuss that into place wherever I need to, and it's kind of like 4x5. I used to just have a little mirror that I stick around front and then adjust the flag so that I could see where the highlights were and get rid of them that way. And that tends to work pretty well. But to Martin's point, if I'm at f16, I can count on just crazy flare from those fixtures. And so a separate exposure for the ceiling, you know, at f8 maybe or something like that, makes a huge difference in what that flare looks like. At f8 it's more spread out. At f16 I get like I've got a star filter on or something.
Right, yeah.
Alan,
Yeah.
are you shooting that 24 tilt Canon
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
at f16?
Yeah.
Doesn't it soften at f16? I think f8 is the sharp point in that.
Yeah, that is the sweet spot. I need the depth of field, and so when I in post production, when I'm running that through the Topaz filters,
yeah,
I can get that back. Yeah, that's not the sharpest aperture. I don't ever shoot at 22 with that lens. F11 would be preferable, but there occasionally, if I've got a big space, I have to stop down. Brad, you look like you got something to say. Okay. Just wondered if you're still with us. Brad's kind of holding back because he knows way more than I do about anything. That's a kind of a trouble thing. Is there anybody else that's shooting for lighting companies here?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a crazy difficult thing.
Yeah, I do. We do product photography, so we'll bring it. Sometimes we'll bring the fixtures in the studio here, and we'll shoot that for there. And then when we're doing application shots, of course, it's just architectural. But yeah, and when it's a lighting company, it's usually warehouse lighting. So I never, you know, obviously you can't light that, so I'm always shooting brackets. But I haven't had the problem that Dale's talking about. You know, not consistently anyway. You know, so. But with brackets, I seem to be able to manage it.
Yeah, when those are product specific kind of shots, then I think you can get away with that wider aperture. And but if you're shooting the space, you know, then you're in trouble. Yeah. So Barry, you're unusually quiet today as well, but yeah, he's on the West Coast. So.
Has he been put in a corner or something?
All I've got is jokes.
Okay.
I was going to say that, you know, you could tell people regarding flare that that's a feature, not a bug. It's very cinematic.
There you go.
They may not buy it, but
it's a special filter. Okay, so I wanted to jump into another thing here, and I know we've kind of beat this infringement thing to death, but I'm just kind of curious where everybody is as far as handling infringements, and maybe the things you're doing that are making life easier for you if you are going after infringements. Because I was kind of whining to Norman this morning before we came on about.
I was whining to you.
But are there some business practices that we might want to share with one another that might make this whole infringement process a little easier to bear? Any thoughts? Yeah, Norman.
I actually had an intellectual property attorney call me. I mean, it was from Utah, and they wanted to handle. They wanted to know if they could handle our infringement cases. I said, "What makes you think I have any?" He goes, "All professional photographers have some." So I don't know how they got my number of contact, but they have the same basic software that Pixie does, and I was thinking, because I've had a lot of, I like what Pixie's done. I've been, you know, they've done, you know, they've made a lot of money, but I've also heard some complaints from my clients and the people they work with the way Pixie dialogues with them and the correspondence back and forth. It's been kind of, I don't know what the word is to use. They've not been
adversarial.
Yeah,
yeah, that one.
I guess so. I mean, but so I'm interested in finding a softer. I wish Pixie would have a softer approach, a more professional approach. I guess I don't see any reason to be unkind with somebody. If you know, I just don't get it. But this last month, I've had several architects call us that work with some of our bigger clients, who have ended up with an image from, whatever, and the, and it's been embarrassing for my client. So I'm starting to be concerned about, is Pixie helping me, or is it going to be hurting me in the back end with my relationship with my good clients? So I'm kind of exploring other avenues, maybe talking one-on-one with an attorney, and the correspondence. I've also noticed, Alan, the correspondence that Pixie sends to clients about an infringement, the wording, I don't care for some of it, and
it's a little rough, I think.
it's very rough, and there are, because I may want to work with these people in the future. I don't want to burn a bridge completely, but I think that's been happening in some cases.
Has anyone noticed that the rate of success with Pixie has been declining in terms of the resolved cases or the monetary damages that have been awarded? Because I have several cases that are outstanding that they've communicated with the infringing party and received no response, and so now they're going to phone calls.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of the process, I think. Yeah. I mean, and then, after the phone calls, then they turn it over to legal, and then it gets some teeth in it. And if you've got it registered, then the return is even greater. But at least that's been my experience. Norm, did I cut you off? Sorry.
There's a lot that, I want to speak. There's a lot that Pixie leaves on the table. I sent a whole folder of stuff over to that Pixie has, said they've done all they can do, and there's been no response. And I've looked at the particular infringement, and I have no love for these people, so I sent it to an attorney myself, and I'm approaching it that way.
On the front end of things, when you invoice something, are there any of you that are making your client, your primary client, aware of multi-party licensing and things like that, and what the possibilities are, and how do you do that? I mean, what is that a conversation that's that's right before the photo shoot, or after, or when you bill, or where does that come?
I make it part of the conversation when someone calls and say, I have a project to shoot. I ask if there's somebody else that wants to participate, because all the people I work with are pretty familiar with multi-party licensing and the benefits. So we try to bring in, if it's a builder, a designer, or an architect, even a painter has been able to come in. So it worked out really nice.
I find I have to explain it multiple times. Do it verbally a couple times. I have two kind of template that I send as an email. If people are not already familiar with it, it seems to break their brain. It's the oddest thing for me. And I keep stressing, save money. You save money. You pay less. You pay lots less if you do this up front. And it's astonishing to me how difficult it is to get that across to people. So, but the trick is, of course, you don't want people to feel stupid, because then they won't hire you. So it's a matter of just gently going at it again from different directions. That's been my strategy.
And as soon as I get the request for a job, the next question is, who might also be interested in licensing these photos?
Oh, okay.
And my terms and conditions say this license is not transferable. Any usage by a party other than client must be by a separate license with Jack Zigan Photography. And it's, no, you can't give this away.
Yeah.
And that seems to work. Except some people pass it on anyway, and that's what Pixie comes in.
I've done it. I've done it my entire career, and I can almost not think of a shoot that I've done in a long time that there isn't at least 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parties sharing the cost.
Mm-hmm.
Of what, George?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you? One of the things that I run into a lot is when someone is in violation and has infringed something. The first question they ask me is, "Well, what do you mean I don't own the photograph?" And I'm always kind of stumped because it really stops me. Is like, I don't think I ever said you did, but that seems to be the first question I get from people infringing is, what do you mean I don't own the photograph? Or, those that have passed it off to other people. And like Barry said, I explained it multiple times during the process, and I'm still stumped by the fact that people think they own the photographs. I don't know. And
I gave up a client who wanted to. He basically said, "I want the copyright," and I said, "You're not getting the copyright." And he went on to say that that he owned all the pictures from his wedding, and I told him he probably didn't and didn't have the copyright to. I said, "I really doubt that your wedding photographer filed and turned over the copyright to you for your wedding." And I think it was very simple that his attorneys told him he should acquire the copyright. And I simply said that wasn't going to happen. And I said, "You've got all the rights to use the images however you want. Why do you need the copyright?" And he said, "Because I want it." And okay.
Well, what I run into, and I probably said this before, some of you know I teach business practices, and I use Facebook as a great research tool to see what pain points there are, particularly for emerging photographers. And the word buyout comes out all the time, and I'm always explaining that buyout is, for one thing, not a legal term of art. And when that word gets used, photographers hear copyright transfer. And so that's not accurate either. When clients use it, they're usually just looking for broad rights. So when I've actually run into people like Brad's run into, and those relationships don't go forward to a paycheck. However, the rest of the time I just say, well, what do you really need them for? Some people get very aggressive and they say, well, ask them if they're going to put an ad on the side of a bus. I don't feel that's a strong negotiating strategy to make people feel belittled. So I just say, what do you think you're going to use it for? And then I just stick all that in the contract or the proposal. I never use the word buyout or copyright transfer. If people really keep pushing on that word copyright transfer, I say, well, that requires an actual signature to transfer the copyright. And I say, I just put in the broad usage. And I had one client come back to me and say, oh, this is great. This is somebody who'd asked for buyout and copyright transfer both. And she said, oh, this is great. And we understand we can't license this to any third parties. So I thought, wow, I did good this time. But that's just, it's a misunderstanding. I think it's not just young people on the copy left, who think everybody should own everything or nobody should own anything, as the case may be. So anyway, that's been my sort of strategy, such as it is. And that's what I suggest to people. And it seems to work most of the time, but you are always going to get people that just don't get it. And they're aggressive, and their attorneys are not IP attorneys. They don't understand either. So
that's great advice. I've never taken that tack before, but do any of you actually transfer copyright? Does that ever happen?
There's not enough money.
I did it once.
I have ethics.
I had an architect client that had worked for Disney for 15 years, and they designed the Marvel studios, not for shooting movies, but for post. So there were these buildings on the Disney lot, and the movie business, you're almost always gonna be work for hire anyway. And Disney has a particular reputation for being the most brutal corporate environment. It's always been that way. So after 15 years, they've finally been allowed to bring in a photographer to shoot these post studios. And I had to sign away my copyright before I was allowed to bid on the job.
Oh, wow.
Which I did. Yeah. But I knew it was going to be work for hire because that's the way it is. We were at least going to be able to use the photos, but for marketing purposes, although there was nothing in there for me to show. But I got the job and Disney was happy. And then they asked me to come back and they said, "What's your price?" And I gave them a pretty decent price. And they said, no, that's too much money. So I never got that job.
Disney.
That's Disney. Squeeze every penny.
You're taking it in
I've done it. I've done it once. I will say I don't sell my copyright. I'm very definitive about not selling my copyright. The only time I sold my copyright is I do all of the airport lounges for American Express. And American Express wanted the copyright, and they are paying handsomely for the copyright.
Yeah, I've got a client who's also airport related, and they're a security company, and it's just part of the deal. And they do pay for it. So my fee is considerably greater than it normally would be, and to me that's okay. And I wouldn't really have. I don't know that there'd be anybody that would have use for those images besides the company that's paying me. So there are those rare occasions that happens.
I mean, that's my situation with Amex. There's nobody who would want to use them other than Amex. They're paying me handsomely for that right. And they're also not restricting me, that I can have the images on my website in my portfolio. So it's I suppose it's a win-win, but it is my one exception.
Yeah,
that's key, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand that you can license, you can sign away your copyright, but you can still put a clause in a contract that says I can use them for myself promotion and so forth. And
yeah, I made a mistake one time. I gave there was this cover band, this Beatles cover band in Chicago, and we went to see them. They were really good. My kids loved them, so Mary Beth and we brought them to the studio, did a nice photo shoot for them to help them out. Met Louise Harrison. It was all fun. So I felt, they were like busted, had nothing. And I gave them a license to go ahead and use the images any way they want. So I'm driving through Missouri one day, and there's this billboard. I'm like, oh, I took a picture just like that, but they used them everywhere, and they became very successful. And they forgot all about me, of course. But
it's an interesting dilemma. Go ahead, Daryl.
I have a question about, you talked about multi-party licensing, and the traditional way I think of that is you license the same set of images to each client, you add a discount to your original commissioning clients, or you add a percentage of your original commissioning client's invoice, and then you split that between the multiple parties. Just wondering if that's how people are doing the cost sharing. Because I would think like a painter might only want a few or a handful of images compared to, say, an architect or a builder. So I'm just curious.
What you've described is what I do if they sign up before the shoot. If they only want one or two images, then they pay a higher per image fee after the shoot. And then the people who were involved beforehand don't really get any financial benefit from that post-shoot arrangement.
Yeah. I think that's the way a lot of us are working that it's kind of a front end thing where you get the discount on the front end, and and you don't do it on the back end at all. And I've had builders who have come to me, and when I've licensed stuff to maybe an interior designer a year or two later, and they want to have me credit them back money, and no, that doesn't ever happen.
Yeah, we actually do the back end thing as well, and it's pretty much an automatic process. So that's basically running on top of our CRM system. So when somebody after the fact comes in and wants to license something, if it's something that we haven't already credited back, we'll give them a small credit on their next project. Works pretty well for loyalty.
Interesting. I just to me, it's once the job's billed, that's it, and there's no more discounts to be had after that. And I bill anybody who wants an image after that, a painter or whoever. It's my normal licensing rates, my one-off rates.
That's the way I do it.
Yeah, I just don't have the capacity for the accounting on that. My right brain dominance has not allowed me to understand how to do that well. But anyway, gentlemen, we're kind of at the end of the hour here. Is there anything else that anybody'd like to bring up before we sign off here?
Well, there's always AI. But so here's my take on AI, and this obviously could be in a whole other hour. Is a lot of people don't understand that we're essentially photographers that at least are shooting digital and do their own post, which I assume is all of us or most of us. We're already using AI. I mean, Topaz is all AI, and the healing tool in Photoshop is AI. So it's not new as far as that goes. And I'm less concerned about losing work to renderings are AI, architectural renderings, and they still don't look as good as a proper photographer can make them look. So people that are going to use renderings, you can see that on the architect's website, they're still using them. If they don't see the value in a photographer, there's not much we can do about it.
I saw a comment today that was saying, people thought renderings were going to take the place of photography, and they haven't. I think there will continue to be value in what we bring to the profession. I think there's probably, some people who will lose out invariably, but ultimately, I think a trained eye is still something of value that won't quickly be replaced.
And there are clients of our clients who want to see as built, not as designed.
Yeah.
How did it actually get done? And they don't trust the render as, what actually happened when they tried to build that damn thing.
Good point.
That's right.
I think there's still,
or they ran out of money.
Yeah,
exactly.
Still value in a photographer's eye and knowing how to set up a shot. I want to cover some of this in another meeting. I think we really ought to. And
I have one final comment here. Alan started earlier today. He said that we're all old.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it didn't hurt my feelings because we're all about the same age. Has anybody noticed that? And I actually had a client say this to me. All the good photographers came from film. The new guys, their work is, some of it's okay, but it's not polished. It's not, I wouldn't call it, high-end photography in any, and I've been thinking about that. I think that that's true. Any photographer today that has any talent or that's in demand, they came from film. I know all of you guys did.
I think there's going to be a big shift in the industry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, Brad.
Oh, I was just going to say, I had an art director say that exact thing to me. And I think what it comes from, it's not only film, but it's vision. Mm-hmm. That you have to be able to walk the project, see the shots, know what the end product's going to be. And if you started in film and you dealt with color correction, putting magenta filters in fluorescent lights and all those type of things, you have an idea of what your end product's going to be. And what I've heard people say is people who never shot in film, whatever comes up on the back of the screen, they think that's right, because they don't have any kind of ground from which to work from. Whereas anybody who shot film knew all the trials and tribulations to get it to what you wanted it to be. And therefore you had to have enough vision to know what the end product was.
Yeah, well said, Brad.
Excellent point. Yeah, when I have a younger photographer around on a shoot, invariably I get the question, well, how do you know where to set up the shot? And I know that they're taking 100 shots because they don't really, they don't see it in here first. And you really do need to see it in your head. And I mean, it's just like music. People that are, jazz musicians, people will ask, well, how do you know what to play? Well, you got to hear it in here first, and then and it's kind of the same situation. And I just think there's going to be a big shift in the industry when all of us decide we've had enough. And I'm not sure what the younger photographers are capable of, quite honestly, because like Norman was saying, and Brad, it's about what they see on the back of the camera that determines what the shot is.
Yeah, I was on a shoot, Alan, with another photographer. I was working with a designer. He was working for the architect, and I mean, he must have shot 300 images. I mean, he's just firing away. In some points, he took the camera off the tripod, and he's. Oh yeah. I mean, it's. Okay.
I
see that all the time.
I think to Brad's point, it's a vision thing, because I've seen younger photographers who know what the final photograph is going to look like, and they take the shots digitally to make sure they have all the components they need to put it together in post, and their age isn't as important as the ability to visualize that final product.
They don't have
sure
any
you have all the pieces.
Yeah, their compositional skills are hard to come by.
I also wonder if it's not also a lack of interest in the history of the trade. I think that some people think that architectural photography sort of stopped in 1960 as becoming really interesting. They're not aware of Ezra Stoller, for instance, or I mean, any contemporary photographers as well, and that they're just not looking at photos. I mean, the way I learned to take photos was by looking at photos. I write also. The way I learned to write was by reading. It's not that complicated. There you go. And you tell people there are actually books about architectural photography. Norman McGrath, and now there's several more, and so forth. I mean, but more than that, just looking at magazines, and there are fewer magazines. And sometimes what you see on a screen is not going to convey the quality that you need that's in print. I got a copy of that.
Yeah.
Norman.
I think most of us have that kind of stuff in our libraries. I think you're right on there, because I don't see too many people that are coming into the business who have the vocabulary of architectural photography that comes from seeing stuff like we're showing here, that even know who these photographers are.
There's a good documentary on Julius Schumann too.
Yeah.
If you want to.
Well, and the thing about Julius, who I met, he was a lovely guy, and I'm only going to say this now because he's dead and this is getting recorded, is, you know, his work stopped innovating around 1960. And so I think some people look at that and they think about the Stall House, the famous picture with the two women sitting in a glass house overlooking, that's it. That's the standard. And there were people doing Ezra Stoller or a guy in LA, Marvin Rand, or Marvin Rand, who were just at the same generation or a little after, who continued to innovate, not for the sake of innovating, but because the tools got better and the art direction got better, and the in publication terms, that they were looking for more interesting photos.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, Julius did nice work. There's no question about that, but he kind of stopped at a certain point. And I mean, I know that he shot film all the way through the end, even when he was in his 90s and his career kind of came back. He had an assistant that would lug around his 4x5. So I was with a photographer who decided to tweak him and mention digital, and I thought we're going to cause a heart attack. We're going to finally kill this guy, and he couldn't handle it. So I'm sorry.
No, Barry,
I'm gossiping now.
I agree with you entirely. I couldn't agree with you more. And even going back full circle to the beginning of our conversation, I mean, I shot large format for 17 years and then went to medium format and shot medium format because I didn't think 35 millimeter was where it needed to be. And then when 35 millimeter was where I felt it needed to be and was a jumping off point, that's when I gave up my medium format. And in all truthfulness, it gets also back to vision. When I was shooting 4x5 or even early medium format, we weren't shooting architecture with people in those spaces.
Yeah.
And now that has evolved. And I just know the things I can do with 35 millimeter and people in spaces that, quite frankly, became quite far too difficult to do with medium format. So, you know, when I'm sitting there and I'm seeing Iwan Bond and Fernando Gaera, Emma Peters, all shooting 35 millimeter digital, I just couldn't see the reason to continue to carry around $70,000 worth of medium format gear.
You know, also along those lines, what I think, and also just to digress, that the one thing that Julius did do that was radical was put people in the photographs. Not, I think, in the way that we often do it. They were very posed, so forth, but that's irrelevant. The thing that I've noticed also is that landscape architects really like having people much more than regular architects for doing interiors. I mean, they kind of expect it for the scale. And I'm not sure that how many emerging photographers are hip to that, that's a kind of a requirement for that kind of work, at least on the part of the landscape architects. So it's just a matter of understanding the culture as much as looking at images out there, you know.
Appreciate all those comments. That, yeah, really important insights, and I thank you for that. I know that the listeners on this podcast, once it gets on the podcast platforms, are going to really appreciate that. Some will disagree heartily, but
well, they can find me and complain directly.
I still have some Astia in the refrigerator. Just so you know.
Yeah. Well, thanks to everyone. This has been a great discussion. We'll do this again next month. I hope you're all busy. The ones I've talked with individually, it sounds like you are. And the market's still great. I'm glad that our industry's not been killed by the changes in the economy, and wish you all the best this spring. Hope you all survive, and we'll talk again next month. Thanks to everyone.
Okay,
Take
thanks,
care.
Alan.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks.
This has been another episode of A Photographer's Life. If you've enjoyed this program, Please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. A Photographer's Life is brought to you by the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This episode is copyrighted, and may not be used in full or in part, without the written permission of the AIAP. Please join us again soon for another inside look at the world of professional architectural photography.